Welcome to Under the Covers. I am your host, Siren, and tonight I am your guide through the depths of the darkness. Pour yourself a drink, do some gardening, and curl up under the covers as we surrender into the abyss. Nothing that drowns in our river ever really truly stays dead. Dad was drunk again. Rain swept over my windshield like waves over a beach as I drove him home from yet another bar where he'd made a fool of himself. He wasn't the drunken brawler type. No, he was a crier. He'd sit at the bar with his head on the table and just start sobbing, wailing, bringing down the whole mood of the place. Even now, he shifted between crying and sniffling while staring out the passenger window in half-conscious states where he couldn't muster the mental coherence to even register such complex emotions. At one point, he even leaned over the center console and tried to hug me, almost making me jerk the steering wheel. "Dad, no, Christ, I'm trying to drive here," I snapped at him. "Keep on your half of the car or I'm pulling over." Like a loyal dog, he recognized the tone of my words, even if not their meaning, and shrunk back sheepishly. Since I was in elementary school, people told me I was remarkably mature for my age. But you kind of have to be when you're forced to act like the parent of the family. The road traveled parallel to our sole local river, the one the school kids called the Devil's Gutter. It snaked in and out of sight behind the tree line as if it liked to taunt every driver that passed. The damn thing was evil. I knew, but I couldn't help but feel a certain nostalgic fondness for it. It was the only thing offering any sense of danger and mystique to what would have otherwise been the least interesting small town in the country. From a glance, it seemed mild, shallow, and narrow enough to make it across with a leap. There was no way of telling that it was actually hundreds of feet deep, that the undercurrent was stronger than the Olympic swimmer could withstand, that the banks were undercut and impossible to climb up once you were in, that the carbonated water had intricately carved networks of hundreds of channels and caves deep into the limestone. Misjudge your leap, and you'd be seized by the undercurrent, dashed against the rocks, plunged deep into some dark cave within which your body would be preserved forever, pinned to a wall or ceiling of a stone like some macabre decoration. The gutter features in our every folktale and ghost story. When I was a kid, we liked to tell the tale of old Bart O'Neill, a 19th century prospector whose cat was apparently very popular with the neighborhood Toms. Every time she'd get knocked up, it was said he'd gather up the kittens in a burlap sack and toss them into the Devil's Gutter. At least, that is when whoever was telling the story would lower their voice to a whisper, until they found his body in his bed, shredded by hundreds of small claws. His eyes had been clawed out, his fingers bitten off like carrots, his ribcage torn open. And within his chest, the police found dozens of tiny poops. That's right. According to legend, the spectral kittens had used his chest cavity as a litter box. That was all made up, of course. The crude invention of imaginative schoolboys. But I have looked through old newspapers and found that someone named Bart O'Neill really did disappear from town a long while ago. No gory details, just up and vanished. The only oddity I noticed was that his cat was found still locked up in a cage in his shed a week after his disappearance. It was well fed, as if somebody had been sneaking in and caring for it. See, this is why I hate taking this road. With every glimpse of the river, my mind always wanders, back to old memories, terrible memories, ones that would have been better left forgotten. It ignites a fire in me, a sort of morbid curiosity I've come to dread. But then Dad broke my line of thought with a long, obnoxiously loud groan. And then I was thinking of the first time I had him in my passenger seat, when I was some anxiety-ridden kid, no older than 15, didn't even have my driver's license yet, my hands shaking that late New Year's night as I struggled to dodge all the other drunk morons swerving all over the road. New Year's was always the worst night for him. This would have been our anniversary, he was groaning. It would have been our 15th. I got over what happened to Mom over a decade ago. Why couldn't he? We aren't the only people who've experienced loss anyway. When I was growing up, the whole town mourned the death of Annabelle, captain of our high school cheerleading squad. She had tried to jump the gutter and even cleared it, but there's just be rain, and the muddy opposite bank gave way beneath her feet and she went right in. Crazy thing was, 15 minutes later, they got a ping from some SOS beacon her mother had made her wear. They took this as proof she'd made it out alive but injured and triggered a frantic search of the surrounding area, with no luck. There were rumors, however improbable, that she'd found her way into an air pocket, somewhere in that limestone cave system, just close enough to the surface that one of her desperate calls for help managed to make it through. Sometimes I picture her down there, in a kind of darkness I can't fathom, struggling to keep her head above the water. I wonder if she knew that surrounding her, somewhere in the dark, were the corpses of those who had been pulled into those caves before her. I picture a gaunt, bleached hand brushing her ankle as those currents carry one by one. I imagined her crowded on all the sides by the gaunt, empty eyes of the people who'd found their way into that air pocket before her and never find their way out. Maybe it was for the best that she wouldn't be in complete darkness. There my mind went again. I got another glimpse of the river and couldn't help but imagine Anna down there, as if her eyes were looking up at me from beneath those blackened waters. I tried to turn up the radio to take my mind off of it and to drown out my dad's moaning and sobbing. But he grunted as if the sound offended him and drunkenly pawed at the dashboard until he turned it back off. I already knew what he'd say tomorrow. "I've let you down," he'd say, head down like a dog caught peeing on the carpet. "I've never been the father I should have been. And it'll all be very genuine and very sincere and very, very temporary." I've even helped pay for his rehab once, but he'd been found choked half to death on his own vomit. "This is a wake-up call," he'd said. "I'm finally ready to be the dad you've always needed me to be." A few grand seemed like a small price to pay to have my dad back. And indeed, for a few months of sobriety, he was the best dad on earth, the best I could have asked for. And then came New Year's again, and it was suddenly like none of it had ever happened. My eyes glimpsed across set upon the gutter, a bouquet left at its base. I knew exactly who it was for. When I was in 4th grade, Bethany, a little girl who went to the same school as me, was swallowed up by the gutter. Her father was the only one who witnessed the accident, and there'd been some suspicious circumstances. I don't really remember. Something about marital issues, custody, that sort of thing. Point was, everybody suspected him. But what proof did we have? The gutter never parts with its secrets. 3 years or so later, her dad just up and vanished too. Nobody thought much of it at first. Everyone assumed he got tired of the side eyes and just skipped town. But then, months after everyone had forgotten the whole business, someone started sending around a voicemail he'd apparently sent out 3 a.m, the night he disappeared. It apparently been sent to some random coworker from his contact list. An accident, clearly. The first minute or two just consisted of the sort of rustling you'd expect from a pocket dial, so they hadn't thought much of it. It hadn't been until their curiosity drove them to investigate deeper that they realized they could hear their dad's heavy, belabored breathing and the sounds of twigs and leaves crackling beneath his feet, as if he were wandering through the middle of the woods. Moreover, off in the distance, they could hear another voice, the faint voice of a little girl, bubbling and giggling like they were playing a game. "Daddy?" The voice kept crying out into the night. "Daddy, where are you?" They noticed, too, that you couldn't hear any crickets or birds or anything else except the forest at night. Everything was dead silent, like the creatures of the woods sensed the presence of a predator. The dad's breathing grew heavier and more panicked when the voice grew louder, nearer, but it remained stifled, as if he was desperately trying to keep quiet, remain unnoticed. Eventually, she was so close that you could hear her little footsteps in the leaves, and the dad didn't even dare to breathe. And then, the sound of branches being parted, the father's gasp, and that little voice laughing and declaring in a sing-song tone, "Daddy, I found you!" And at that exact moment, the voicemail reached its time limit. The cop's official line was that it was fake, just some audio doctored up by bored teenagers to feed into the sensationalized mythology of the Devil's Gutter. But Bethany's remaining relatives swore up and down that they recognized that giggly little voice, that it was unmistakable. Lost in thought, I blinked, and somehow, in that instance, a woman appeared in the middle of the road. I can't remember the next few seconds. It was as if I'd time traveled. One moment I was driving along, and the next I was stuck in a muddy ditch on the roadside, the hood just inches away from an oak tree, sturdy enough to have bisected my car. And Dad was screaming like a madman, incoherently at first and then congealing into a name, Jessica! He was screaming out for Mom, I realized. Jessica! As he screamed, he threw open the passenger side door and tore off into the woods with a drunken stumble. When I glanced into the rearview mirror, the woman was still standing there in the road, a vague silhouette barely illuminated by whatever moonlight broke through the storm. But when I looked back with my own eyes, she was gone. I cursed like a sailor as I took off into the storm, blindly in the direction I thought my dad had went. My heart was in my throat. We were so close to the gutter. In his state, he could so easily fall in, become just another name in its long list, another creepy story to tell on school playgrounds. But then it became clear. I was in the same danger. The storm was picking up rapidly, sideways rain blasting my eyes, wind tugging at the trees by their roots. Yet somehow, stupidly, what terrified me the most, while stumbling through those darkened woods, I might hear a little girl's voice off in the distance shouting, Daddy? Suddenly I froze in place. I realized I could hear the bubbling and crashing of the gutter's current, even over the storm. It must be so close. I tried to look out for it, but the rain seared my eyes whenever I was not covering them with my arm. I was too terrified to take a step in any direction, but the storm took action for me by sweeping away the mud beneath my feet. Anna's fate flashed in my mind, the muddy bank giving way. My death wasn't even going to be original. I thrashed and floundered, feeling the earth seem to envelop me from below like a massive creature, pulling me into its gullet. Through sheer luck, my random grabs caught purchase. A thick, sturdy tree root was all that saved me from the waters below, and I clung to it with every scrap of my strength I had, even as the rain left it soaked and slippery. I managed to hold on for a while, with no way of backing up, but unwilling to let go of my only lifeline. And then I felt a cold hand wrap around my ankle. My body tensed with such horror that I lost my grip in an instant, and those cruel waters had me. They seemed to toy with me for a while, spinning me about the surface as I curled up in the fetal position. The shock of the frigid cold caused me to suck down a breath instinctively, filling my lungs with water. As I scratched at my chest, my eyes opened for just a split second. On either side of me were those thick limestone walls, pockmarked with the black abysses that were caves. And that limestone led down below, far below, disappearing into that infinite, inky blackness beneath me. The experts' guesses must have been wrong. The gutter couldn't just be a few 100 feet deep. It had to be a mile, at the very least. Just looking down into that darkness, I felt the same sense of vertigo as I felt looking down from the roof of the Empire State Building. That and an overwhelming sense of things looking up at me, staring back. It reminded me of joining the theater group as a kid, standing on the stage for the first time and realizing that there were over 100 pairs of eyes on me, watching me, expecting a performance. Except this time, I knew they were here to watch me die. Watch me become one of them, sink down far beneath the surface, and join them in all that darkness, never to see sunlight again, except vaguely through the surface of the water miles above my new home. But even that didn't terrify me quite as much as the prospect of landing in one of those caves. Even as the undercurrent bashed me savagely against the rocks and my lungs cried for air, my only focus was avoiding them. I swear I could see bloated arms and grasping hands reaching out from the dark of each cave, grasping for me as I passed by. As if each occupant was lonely, desperate for a companion in their eternal resting places. Suddenly, the current bashed my head against a rock, and from then, everything was abstract and fuzzy. I could only muster a single coherent thought. Please, not here, it went. Don't let me die here. Somehow, I knew that if I died beneath these waters, my souls would never break the surface. As if to answer my prayer, a pair of arms settled around me. Not the cold, grasping claws reaching from the caves, but something warm and comfortable, embracing me, cradling me close in a way that told me everything was going to be okay. Again, the next few seconds were a blur. I have no explanation for how I ended up back on the shore, shivering from the freezing waters and hacking, retching, emptying the water from my lungs upon the mud. All I know is when I looked up, a bolt of lightning briefly illuminated the stone memorial looming above me, which upon read, "In loving memory of Jessica Whitaker." My family is one of the ones of the school kids whisper about. The ones they make up wild stories and creepy theories about. Terminal cancer, they'd say around campfires, that was so horribly painful that not even the morphine could do anything for her. She'd been a painter, always drawing portraits of the gutter. She was the only person who thought it was beautiful, not evil. So the legend goes, she begged her husband, "Please take me to the river. Let me become part of it. I don't want to hurt anymore." They say that they did it on their anniversary, New Year's Day. I heard a long, choking rasp. For a moment, I was almost relieved. I thought it was another one of my father's drunken groans. Then I realized it was coming from the river itself. I turned and beheld a dozen hands reaching out over the side of the banks, unnameable things pulling themselves up from the waters. I only caught vague glimpses of the crawling, groaning creatures, briefly illuminated by the lightning. Their skins were bleached white and transparent, looking like road maps made of veins and arteries stretched taut over gray muscles and jagged ribs with putrid organs. Many were missing legs, arms, even heads. Others were more ancient still, mummified strands of flesh seemingly loosely stitched to the crumbling remains of a skeletal structure. All seemed to be looking right at me, even though none of them had any eyes to speak of, only empty black sockets. They were crawling forwards with horrid determination. Once the gutter had taken you into its waters, laid its claim to you, it never wanted to let you go. They were only coming to retrieve what they already owned. I tried to crawl away through the mud, but it felt like crawling in a bad dream. I felt like the very planet was turning sideways, gravity itself guiding me backwards towards the river. Then a figure burst through the woods, large and heavy-set. My father. He stumbled into the middle of the crowd of the dead, waving his arms, trying to seize their attention. "Take me! Take me! Not them! Take me!" He was screaming like a man possessed, but they didn't seem to even notice him. They were dead set on me, blind to the rest of the world. Then he turned to the lake, and my eyes followed his gaze, too. The woman from the road, now her silhouette was standing in the middle of the river, seeming to hover over a few inches above the water, her dress billowing in the wind. "Jessica, take me! Tell them to take me!" He let out a primal, raw scream, one that must have torn his throat to shreds. "I don't want to hurt anymore." She calmly beckoned him with her finger, and in that moment, he knew what he had to do. He didn't hesitate. He went sliding down the bank, and for a moment, he seemed to stand upon those bubbly, surging waters just like she did. His arms were stretched wide as he stumbled forward, as if ready to embrace her. And then I blinked, and they were gone. So too disappeared that legion of the dead. It seemed like they'd accepted the trade, one soul for another. The gutter always took its due. It would have been easy to tell everyone that my dad had just stumbled stupidly into the gutters during another one of his drunken stupors, but I wanted people to remember his sacrifice. I weaved some tale of me falling in and him jumping after me and hoisting me out, and even at the cost of his own life. It didn't make a lot of sense, I must admit, and some people even suspected me for a while. But eventually, everybody just accepted the idea of him being a hero in his last moments, getting some redemption in the last. People like when stories get wrapped up in a neat little bow. Sometimes I still dream about the two of them, floating in the center of some underwater cave chamber, yet somehow illuminated by the moonlight. And by the walls of the chamber, all lined with glowing pinprick white eyes, like the stars in the sky. Dead, but not dead. The current still flows about them, animating them like marionettes, spinning them around each other, my mom in my father's arms like a waltz, the way they were on their wedding day. Dancing, dancing, on and on forever, before their audience of the dead. The Miracle House feeds on personal demons. I wish I didn't go inside. The nights are the worst. The few minutes of sleep come with nightmares. the kind that stay with me for days on end. But even that is better than what I've been carrying inside since birth. I've always been on the belief that some people are born with monsters attached to their mind. A dark companion, an unseen creature in the passenger seat of this car called life. Happiness, I do not know. I've never once been happy about anything. Relationships come and go, it's good for a little while, but the result is the same every time. Nothing brings joy, and my life is hell. The sun has never showed on my dead-end street, and it never will. I am 100% sure of this. Apathy is my middle name. Anxiety lives inside me. Depression flows through my crooked veins. Each day brings along with the same bitter reality, endless agony. Yet I am not alone. I don't know what or who accompanies me, but I can always sense when it's here. If you're like me, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've called this companion Mr. Musician. Whenever he comes to me, my soul turns into the sad and depressing violin song. If I close my eyes, I see a large room filled with faceless people dressed in black and wearing white gloves staring at me. I know I am on a stage. I don't see anything except them, but I know behind me there is a monster. My eventual demise, Mr. Musician. And he plays his song slowly, as he caresses the violin's chords with his deadly bow. Often I imagine the violin to be my own beating heart, and Mr. Musician pulls away at its strings until they all eventually break. A timely death of all things beautiful. Yet that time isn't now. I want to heal. I want to know how good life tastes like. I want to slurp the nectar and honey of happiness. I thought about doing this for a long time now. I know it will work, but it takes lots of courage to go inside that old house. Some people say the house is demonic, built by evil himself ages ago. One thing is true. No one really knows who the house belongs to, who built it, or how old it is. This adds to the aura of mystery surrounding this old construction of wood. Others say it heals you on the inside, takes all your problems and makes you alive again. It grabs a hold of all your broken parts and glues them back together. The miracle house. One must spend 24 hours inside. Only after that, one can say the healing of mind and soul is complete. The most people I've talked to said it only works, but didn't disclose any details about the events that occur in the miracle house. After all, it's a deeply personal experience. However, I will tell you about mine because why not? There is nothing to be hidden from you. Or maybe it will help others build the courage to face their demons and even kill them once and for all. I have never felt as anxious as I did before stepping foot in that house. From the outside, it was a regular one. It smelled old and the paint had peeled off. The steps were filled with dust and dirt, signs of no one living there anymore. The only thing off was that the windows were painted black. I thought it had something to do with the passing of time. Whoever was inside mustn't know what the hour is. The front door opened, and the man came outside on the porch to greet me. "Hello there. I thought this house was abandoned." "Hello, mister. I suppose you're here to get rid of your demons, correct?" "Yes." "Great. Do not ask me any questions, please. You need to give me your phone and any other devices you might have. Communication with the outside is prohibited." "This feels odd. How do I know you won't steal my phone?" The man exhaled and shook his head. He began closing the door. "Wait, okay, just so you know I have GPS tracking. I won't steal anything from you, young man, but this house will." I nodded. "See you tomorrow. Same time. Good luck, Jack." I swallowed. How did he know my name? The man locked the door from the outside. I heard him going down the steps. Then, only silence. Dampness filled the air. In the hallway, wood burned in the fireplace. The flames cast shadows on the walls around me. They resembled little black devils dancing with excitement. An old burgundy leather chair faced the fireplace, and on it was a folded piece of paper. I opened it to read the following. "Dear Jack, the Miracle House welcomes you with open arms. Please sit on the chair as you continue to read. Now, I know your pain. I've seen it before. I will take it from you. You are scared and wondering if this will work. You ask yourself if the living hell you're enduring will ever end. Dearest Jack, it will end. All of it. You won't ever remember the agony in your old life. I will take this burden from you. Now, focus on the fireplace. Embrace the warmth of this beautiful house. Be one with it. Your eyes begin to feel tired. You need to sleep for the next 2 hours. Sleep, Jack. And so I did. I didn't dream anything. I didn't have any violent nightmares like I usually do. It was a peaceful and restful sleep. I opened my eyes and found myself in another room. A bloodied knife appeared in my hand. I screamed, and I threw it on the floor. Both my arms had fresh cuts on them, but those didn't hurt, not a single bit. After the initial shock wore off, I knew something was off, but in a good way. I felt lighter than before. As if the poison in my veins had leaked on the floor and evaporated. I smiled. Was this the way to absolution? A door creaked open behind me, and I jumped. My gut told me to go through. I found myself in a place where the air reeked of bleach. The bright neon lights almost blinded me. Dirty ceramic tiles covered the whole room. A bathtub filled with black water stood in its center. Someone had taped another piece of paper on the wall. Jack, you feel lighter than ever before, don't you? You can't understand what is happening, but it's good. You want more of this. You must wash away all the rotting things inside. Darkness eats darkness. Step inside the small black ocean and let its tranquility carry you away. I got in the bathtub straight away. No hesitation. The miracle house indeed performed miracles. I closed my eyes and relaxed. The warm water had an oily texture. Somewhere in another room, I heard a metallic sound, as if someone had dropped millions of nails on the ground. My skin suddenly hurt. It burned like millions of needles punctured it. I tried getting out, but was stuck. I couldn't. A black hand extended from under the water with bony fingers and long, sharp nails. It lunged to my neck and choked me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything. The cold, dead hand squeezed my throat until I passed out. This time I woke up in a completely dark room. No light, no windows, nothing. Just blackness. "Oh, my dear Jack," a voice said from a distant, cold place. "You are here at last." "Who are you?" "You know me very well, dear boy. You have known me your whole life. You even gave me a name." "What?" "Yes, you did, Mr. Musician." A wave of fear washed over me, a fear so great like I never felt before. I was in the same room with my arch enemy, my nemesis. Was this the end? Again, I sat down on a chair. I thought it had to be the same chair in the hallway. "You ruined my life since the day I was born. And you cut me out of your veins, drowned me and cast me out. And now, here I am." "What is this place?" "The miracle house, where all the pain comes to die. The place where you stay face to face with your demons." "But what are you?" "I am you. You are my child. I have made you. I have molded you into what you are. I love you, Jack." I heard footsteps coming towards me. "Stay away from me!" "Too late for that, Jack. You wanted me gone. You ripped me from you and brought me here." "That means I'm cured. No more pain." "Are you sure about that, my dear boy?" His hands touched me from all directions in that pitch-black darkness. Tongues licked the fresh wounds on my wrist. "Oh, the pain tastes amazing," Mr. Musician said. My stomach churned and I felt nauseous. I vomited and heard large chunks of flesh hitting the floor. They squished and hissed and made all kinds of sounds. They were suffering and dying. I felt like large tumors left my body in a rush. 2 red dots blinked at me. They studied me with inquisitive awe and disbelief. I was healing. The evil was leaving my body, never to come back in again. Now he was a separate entity. His lies and deceiving tongue told me all kinds of things. "I made you what you are. Who would you be without me, Jack?" "I'd be free." "Do you think I will ever die?" "No, I will not. I will come back again and again until your mind explodes." "Do you really think this house performs miracles?" "Well, it got you out of my system, didn't it? You're scared too right now. You don't know what to do with this new reality you find yourself in." Mr. Musician groaned with discontent. You'll never survive without me, Jack. I'll be a part of you forever. I felt things crawling up on me, wet, sticky, emanating a foul smell. They hissed as they moved slowly. Thousands of them wanted to get under my eyeballs, up my nose, inside my ears and mouth. I tried to get them all off of me, but they wouldn't let go. The vile parasites wanted to infect me and eat me from the inside out. I turned away from the voice, and the worms or the small snakes relented. I walked with small steps away from wherever the hell Mr. Musician was. I hoped to find a door so I can get out of the darkness. I didn't know how much time had passed. It was impossible to tell. I heard a click below me, and I fell down a hatch. I didn't get any injuries upon landing, but I had a few seconds to adjust to the new room. When it all came into focus, I noticed the room was my living room, an exact replica. The windows were all painted black, a reminder I was still in the Miracle House. Near my desk where I work and edit my videos, I noticed something I didn't have in my house. A tall, rectangular mirror with an arrow painted in front of it on the beige carpet. I stood in front of the mirror and studied my reflection. I looked healthier, as if losing a few pounds and something else on the inside. But soon the reflection didn't go along with my movements anymore. I moved right. The reflection stood still. I smiled. The reflection frowned. I waved with my left hand. The reflection's right hand extended through the mirror. The man who came out was a crooked version of me. His skin was the color of charcoal, and he had the exact same hands as the one in the bathtub. His eyes gleamed red, and his evil grin sent a crushing wave of fear down my spine. Through the mirror, he jumped at me. All this time, I was you, Jack, and you were me. You are your worst enemy, and I am your worst enemy. It's a vicious, never-ending circle. It goes on and on and on like this forever. Get the fuck off of me! You don't like my music anymore? Do you want to cut me out of your life? He was anorexic, and spiteful hate filled his eyes. He hated all things holy, all things that made me human. Mr. Musician wanted me terminated there and then. I balled my fist and kicked him hard in the face. He lost control for a moment, and I managed to get up and run away for a second. I threw a chair at him and hit him in the head, and he went down, barely moving. Then I elbowed the mirror, took a shard of glass, and put it in his side. Black liquid started oozing on the carpet. It burned through like the fabric of hot tar. The evil me, Mr. Musician, pulled the shard out like nothing stood up. He came toward me and pinned my body to the wall and pressed against my stomach. Guess one of us dies today, huh, Jack? Tears welled my eyes and went down my cheeks like raging rivers. To conquer your fear, you must face it. I am not afraid of you anymore, Mr. Musician. Yeah, tell yourself lies, Jack. That only works in the movies. He cut my stomach and put his hand through the wound. I could feel his hands moving around my insides, squishing whatever he could catch. I fell to my knees, blood soaking the carpet wet. The red of my inside against the poisonous black liquid. What an ugly view. Bye, Jack. I faded to black. I woke up on the front porch of the house, feeling like a different person. I don't know what happened after Mr. Musician happened. I don't know where he went. My phone was in my pocket. But I feel different. I feel like a new man in a new body. The wound still hurts, but that should heal up. Soon I'll be as good as new. This world is mine for the taking now. I can see everything through different eyes. I can do whatever I want at last. There aren't two entities in the same body anymore. There is only me. I have full control now.